Hello everyone, welcome back to the stream. It is Wednesday? It is Wednesday, the 12th of November. It's about 2 p.m. here in the UK and I don't really have a brain, so we'll see how today goes. I hope everyone's well. I'm sorry I missed yesterday. Hang on, the music is in fact a little bit loud. Every day I wake up, I've not even seen that film, I've just seen the meme. Anyway, every day I wake up and I have at least an hour, generally more than that, where I have to adjust to the fact that I exist. And try and summon the energy to do absolutely anything. And I had that happen yesterday, as it normally does, only it didn't stop. And on Monday, whilst I had a very successful day because I got done all the things, including getting blood taken, and I'm still quite, you can't really see, oh, you can just about see, you see that blue bit? That's the bruise from having blood taken. I did that, I did choir, I did a whole bunch of work in between, I did mentoring, and on Tuesday, my body went, and that was too much. So I basically spent all of yesterday in bed. I had a couple of moments where I had a little bit where I was able to come and be at my desk and do some Minecraft stuff. I've started transporting lava to and from the nether, as you do. And I got some laundry done and a little bit of washing up, and that was it. That was my day. I was mostly in bed, which has helped. I'm still not 100%, and we may have learned why, because in a shocking turn of events after, this is what, year 6 of chronic illness, a test result came back positive, which genuinely never happened to me, apart from I could count on one hand in the whole, I mean, really, I've been the severe chronic illness decline is 6 years, but it's been more than that. It's been more like 10 years since stuff has started to happen with my body. And in those 10 years, I think it's about 3 times that I've had a test result come back positive. So this is very exciting to me. It's a mineral that's low, so it's not like a this is the thing, I've had a lot of tests done recently, and obviously it's nice to see all the cancer screenings come back negative. That is pleasing to me. But it was, seeing seeing something that come back positive and going, oh, and then my GP went, and it's been declining for the past few years, and I was like, oh, and she went, do you drink alcohol? And I went, no, I've been teetotal for over a decade. And because that's the normal cause. And she was like, are you eating enough? And I'm like, I'm definitely eating enough. And she's like, is your diet, balanced? And I'm like, I'm doing my best with it. Like, it's a lot better than it used to be. And I supplement stuff as well. It turns out I've been supplementing the thing I'm almost dangerously deficient in for several years. It's been in my multivitamin, which I've only just run out of. So we're doing some other tests that are like, if this comes up, firstly we're repeating that test just to make sure it wasn't a one-off. Then we're doing like other connected tests. This unfortunately means I need more blood taken. But once that's done, I can have a hospital referral, because basically to get a referral for this thing, they will say, like, have you had these tests done? So we're just making sure all of those tests are done. One of which is my celiac test. I've had blood taken for a celiac test before, and it just sort of disappeared. Like, she was like, I can see that we had the sample and sent the sample off, because I've had like other samples that I've sent in as well, and then it just nothing's happened with it. So somewhere out there is just some blood of mine. who knows where it's gone. But yeah, so that's genuinely exciting to me because I've never had tests show what's happening. The gastro referral is because since it's been like a chronic decline in my levels and I should be getting it, I am ingesting it from places, like there's some sort of absorption issue going on, so they will then be able to root out where that is. There's other things that could cause it. It's one of those things the thyroid can cause knock-on of, and my last thyroid test was normal, but we'll see if this one is. And yeah, so that's I'm in a little bit of shock, and it's kind of exciting that we might have found something to explain the stuff that's going on with my body, or some of the stuff. It can make, although I don't think it's the cause of my pain, it can make joint pain worse and muscle weakness worse. So it's very possible that some of that could reverse if we fix this. Which, yeah, like, I'm not aspiring to running marathons. I'll be happy if I, like, can manage to walk to a bus stop again. I'll be happy if I can take the rubbish out without it being incredibly painful, frankly. So that's been my morning. I was also going to talk about all the work I got done on Monday. So first of all, I have finished Storming Bedlam, which continues to be incredible and really useful and really good. It does conclude, as many books on the history of psychiatry do, that actually it was racism all along. If anyone wasn't sure, it was in fact racism all along. And related to that, I got, now this is a book that I've read about before, but it really dug into, like, so this is by Frantz Fanon. Frantz Fanon was a black psychiatrist who came, oh god, I can't remember what country he's from originally, but he ends up going to, I don't know why the sub-goal just reappeared itself. Yeah, so Fanon ended up going to North Africa and doing a load of studies, and one of the things that they did that was really interesting was, that would be why, they studied like interventions in a psychiatric hospital in Austria. I think it was Austria, a European country where it was all white people, and then they studied it in a psychiatric hospital in North Africa, and all of the white people were like, yes, we're very happy to have all of these, and it was treatments like, here are some art supplies, here are some dance classes, and the idea of like providing social intervention in order to help improve people's well-being, which seems like a positive thing, right? This study really highlighted how, one, white psychiatrists really like misinterpreting shit, and two, it's more complicated than just what the treatment is that you're giving, because in the North African hospital, all of the patients refused the treatment. They refused to participate in it. So what the racist white psychiatrists decided is that this meant that black people didn't have any, like, interest in the cultural social intervention, and that it was because they were incapable of engaging with it, as opposed to looking at, like, maybe it's the fact that you took the psychiatric hospital, a deeply Western and white institution, and forced it on the North Africans that you're colonizing. Maybe that's why they don't want to take part. But no, that was not what most of the white psychiatrists concluded. They obviously took the racist conclusion. Fanon was there and was like, I think it might be more complicated than this. And so he ends up ultimately moving away from the idea that these social interventions can work and into the realm of, I think the problem is that psychiatry is inherently racist and is being used as a tool of colonization. And he spends a bunch of time studying this. This is written during, it says it on the back here, is the Algerian War for Independence. And it's a combination of, he's lumped in with anti-psychiatry, which is where I'd encountered reading about him before, but having him like really positioned as a decolonial expert, like, contextualizes his work in a way that makes it, one, more interesting to me, and two, I think more accurate and more important. The first chapter of this book is about violence, and the last chapter is on madness. And something that Warren argues in Storming Bedlam is that these two chapters are much more connected than people read them as. They read the first chapter as important and the last chapter as unimportant. And Warren basically says, I think actually you're meant to read these in harmony. And you're meant to read it as the idea that madness and violence are interconnected because the categorization and quote-unquote treatment of madness is a form of violence. And that it is all linked into colonialism and the like position of the black person or the person of colour. It's black people in this instance, but obviously this happens in colonialism in India, it happens in colonialism in Asia, including sort of Japanese imperialism and whatever it may be. And it's much more a question of that, which incidentally is why, in my opinion, and the opinion of many people, like scholars that I think really know what they're talking about, they really know their shit, I don't think you can be a mad studies scholar without being a critical race scholar. Because I think in order to study madness and the construction of madness and how we reclaim the idea of madness to both acknowledge that history and also bring the point of view of the mad and the maddened to the forefront, I don't think you can do that without having a grounding of critical race studies. Especially as a white scholar. Like, if I came in here and was like, oh yeah, it's all about, you know, it's just the medical system that's the problem, thinking, you know, over pathologizing us, then I would end up, you know, being just as much of a problem. I would basically be colonizing madness in that sense, as opposed to using madness as a part of a tool of colonization. That's been my soapbox for the morning. So yeah, I got this to read as well. So my plan is I'll do one pomo reading this, but I want the majority of today to be, let me just bring it up over here. I started continuing my reading on safety tools. And I, what was it? I was the Harveyanian that I read last. It was that Harveyanian that I read last, and then I read the paper on BDSM and TTRPGs, which, by the way, really interesting. It was sort of looking at how BDSM and sexuality studies and game studies have a lot of crossover, and queer studies in there as well. It was really interesting. So I've got more of my very long list of stuff on safety tools to read. I don't have any super intense observations yet from what I've been reading. Something I have noticed. Which paper was it in? Hang on. There was a point in history. Oh, okay. First of all, so there was a blog from the LARP Right blog that was cited in one of the other papers I'd already read, and it has this really fantastic quote. This is not what I was going to say, but I'm going to read this quote anyway because it was a really fantastic quote, which is, "No safety rule or practice will eliminate physical risk from LARP or emotional risk from all kinds of role-playing. Spontaneity is risky. That's part of the point." Which I like, because one of the criticisms often levied against any kind of safety tool in any context, whether that's thinking about trigger warnings, or, content warnings or things like that, or thinking about any kind of media that fully excludes something so that it's safe for people who don't like that to read it, toggles for arachnophobia mode on video games and things like that. One of the arguments is that if you take all of that stuff out, then everything's going to be boring, and if you don't challenge yourself, it will never be a problem. I love this argument that actually everything's always risky, and you're not removing that risk entirely by using a safety tool. Anyway, where I thought it was in, maybe it wasn't in the BDSM. That's into, maybe I didn't make a note on it. Anyway, one of the things that the BDSM and TTRPGs article did is noted and they call it scripting power, which really is the power to control the narrative. They noticed the crossover between the scripting power of a dominant in a DS scene and of the DM, which I thought was a really cool and interesting comparison. Anyway, I can't find it. One of the things I read noted, and in fact I should go back and find it, because this is a thing that I would like to use, that there's a point where in LARPing especially, safety tools were initially, it might have been the LARP Pride blog, that safety tools were initially only used for the physical and moved to being used for the emotional as well. This is actually my experience too. Let's have a look at the LARP Pride blog very quickly and see if it's on there. I think it is this one. Let's just search for the word emotional. Yeah. Oh, here we are. I did know this. Did I not? It's literally here in my notebook. I just didn't see it. Anyway, so this article is from the Nordic point of view, so it talks about cut and brems, which is cut and break or slow down. Which are common. They're the safety words used in LARP, where this author is from. I've actually been familiar with safety as the safety call in LARPing. So if someone fell over in a combat, you would yell safety. I came from very high combat LARPs where it was very physical safety focused. There wasn't any way that you could indicate emotional distress other than just leaving. I have a story about that, which I think I've told before. Anyway, cut was invented in Norwegian LARP in the 90s. Brems, which is break, was added in 1997, together with a repurposing of cut to cover not just medical, but also emotional emergencies. So, that's 97 is when it's positioning that, which is earlier than I'd expected, actually. But tracks with Nordic LARP being more emotionally focused from the outset. There was some stuff in the Harveyanian that I read. Harveyanian is a LARP theorist that I've read before, and cited in my master's thesis, and he talks about some states of mind that have been identified in LARP theory, because this paper of his, which was really interesting, was looking at identity state. I wish I'd read this for my master's thesis, my master's dissertation, because it was talking about how much are you and how much are you your character when you're LARPing, and like the different ways in which you can experience identity, and which parts of those are given over to the character and which parts remain, you know, the purview of the player and active, what's active and what's passive, and in that sense. It takes a very different conclusion to other scholarship, but it is also a very novel study that they do. So they note that the conclusions could be off because they're the first people ever to do this kind of study. And it was really interesting. And I want to go back into it because I was reading it when I was tired. My eternal problem. And so it didn't quite go in as much as it needed to. 1 second. All right. Yeah, so I want to go back in and like write down what all those states are, really understand what those states are, so I can better understand his study as a whole. But then I've just got a fuck ton of other reading to do. So I think that's the plan for today, is I will do... Where are we time-wise? Because I know I talked for a bunch. We have time for 3 Pomo sessions. Sorry, my back's already hurting, and I'm trying to make sure the heating pad stays in place. I think I'm gonna start working through the neurodivergent books. Because there's a lot of them. There's one that I know there's a bunch of references in. My back gets a damn it. I agree. My back deserves a damn it. The neurodivergent books I'm most familiar with is As LARP Grows Up, which is from 2003. I'm very out of date in terms of my knowledge of... So it's neurodivergent and Solmekuta. I have no idea if those pronunciations are wrong. I can tell you that those pronunciations are wrong. I can't tell you what they should be. So I've got those to read through. So that is likely going to be what I will be doing for these first 2 Pomo sessions, and then I'll read some Fanon for the last one. And I think that's the balance I want. I think I generally want to be 2/3 work on thesis, 1/3 work on general mad studies scholarship. Or general whatever field it is I'm reading in at the time scholarship. Because as we know. This was one of the things that was in the critical race disability studies report that was done, that I read last week, I think, was they were talking about the additional labour you have to do as an intersectional scholar. So a lot of intersectional scholarship is done because we recognise the interplay between systems of oppression. Like I was saying, in order to look at the oppression of mad people, I need to understand the oppression of racialized people. I need to understand colonialism. And that means that in order to do this work the way that I believe it should be done, I actually need to be an expert in far more than just one thing. Whereas if I was, back when I was just studying Shakespeare, I needed literature studies, maybe some theatre studies, which is really sort of all part of that anyway, and all using the same kind of thinking. I was using queer and feminist and gender studies as part of it as well, because I was specifically looking at the women in Shakespeare. But now I need to know everything. Which, don't get me wrong, I really like. I think I would be bored if I was still a Shakespeare scholar. I think I would be very bored. But here we are. I must read all the things. So, everyone cross your fingers that OBS does not crash when I do this. We're okay. It did crash before the stream. So I'm going to O3 us for Pomo first of all. Let's get my tasks in. So I want to now read. I'm going to read States of Play first, because this is the one that I'm told is the most relevant. And then I'll have later read other Newpunkt. And then later than that, read Bannon. So that's what I will be doing. I will be here. I'm probably going to turn this camera off when I'm not talking to you, just so I can focus on this work and not get distracted by being perceived. As always, we're going to do 20 minutes on, 5 minutes off. In fact, this first one, because I've spent half an hour talking, will be 20 minutes on, 10 minutes break, and then we'll do 25 and then 20. You are welcome to join in working along with me. There are commands up here to the right that you can use to join in the task list, but there is no obligation to do so. You can just work along with us in gentle solidarity. You can do more than 20 minutes if you need that to help you focus. You can do less than 20 minutes if 20 minutes feels like too much. Remember, 2 minutes of productivity is always infinitely more than the 0 that you might achieve otherwise if you were just sitting there trying to force yourself to do 8 hours of work. So yeah, I'm going to start us off. So that will be timer 2010. And yeah, I'll be here doing some work, and thank you all for being here. I will see you in 20 minutes. Oh, I never muted myself. I think I just moved my microphone, or I unmuted it as I turned it round. I'm just, I found a quote that is very useful for me, and I think is also going to be really useful for another academic that I know is working on safety tools, so I'm sending it to her. I don't know if that's weird. I wanted to be helpful. Is it parasocial, or because that is a famous academic, or is it... I don't know. We'll see. I overthink these things. It's a long quote though, and I'm sending it via Blue Sky message, via yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sending it via Blue Sky comment. So it's taking me like, maybe I just email it to her. I'm sending the reply. Doing it this way means that, like, if she just wants to ignore it, that's okay. Because I feel more pressure to respond to an email than to a Blue Sky reply. Does that make sense? I don't know. Anyway, this is really useful. This is I'm on the article that I think is the one I've seen referenced a bunch, which is called The Golden Rule of LARP, and it's basically around, like, the idea of ethics and safety in LARPing. And the quote specifically is basically saying, we're really practiced at upholding the illusion of the LARP, so ignoring the anachronous safety signs if we're LARPing in a medieval setting in a scout camp, for example. You know, we ignore that there's a fire extinguisher there by the door. We ignore that there's a glowing exit sign. You know, these kinds of things. We're really practiced at doing that. We're less practiced at the use of a safety tool. And even though a lot of places now, especially in the Nordic LARP scene. So Nordic LARP, also for clarity, I realise I talk about Nordic LARP a lot, but I saw one of the intro to this book clarifies this, and it made me think about the fact that I've never clarified it. Nordic LARP is a school, a style of LARPing. It doesn't refer to all LARP done in the Nordic countries. You can have LARPs in Norway, and the other Sweden and other Nordic countries that do not follow the Nordic LARP school. But Nordic LARP tends to prize being more intense and more experimental. And it's very common in that school, and also beyond in other LARP, to, when you're going through safety words and other safety tools prior to the game, that you have people practice saying them. So I never did this in LARPing, and I can confirm it does make you nervous. It is much easier though. Like, I've yelled safety before because someone, let's use an example, someone got hit in the face. It happens accidentally sometimes in high combat LARPs, because although, for those who don't know, high combat LARPs, which is where people use foam weaponry, it's foam weaponry but that has a carbon fibre core, so that it's not floppy. Often called boffer weapons when they're particularly, like, chunky. So you can hit people with them, not like... Obviously, if you whacked someone with one of these, it would hurt. But you're not aiming to do that. You're aiming to tap them so that they know they've taken a hit. There is a rule in these systems, often for insurance, but also just for general safety, not to aim any hits higher than the neck, because it can be damaging. Even with... And the reason it's aim is that everyone's different heights, and in a fight you're going to accidentally get hit across the face sometimes. In the same way that football is not specifically a contact sport, but it is, you know. There's no rules in the game of football for tackling someone, but people do run into each other, kind of thing. And so, yeah, yelling safety because you saw someone get hit in the face is very different and very easy to do, especially when it's about someone else's safety. It is much harder to do that when it's I feel unsafe emotionally or mentally. And they're giving one of the best examples given in this article is that some of the things, for example, there are LARPs that simulate imprisonment, including unsafe and oppressive and abusive prison conditions. Now, whilst they won't be literally kicking someone in the stomach, for example, they're just mimicking it, you're still using dehumanization, you're still using confinement, solitary confinement, all of this kind of things that are methods of torture. And what this article points out is that's the Stanford prison experiment. Like, and I wrote this note on here, like, there's a lot of crossover between some LARPs and that. Yeah, it's really refreshing and interesting. And this is from 2012. So this is, I mean, I was very much, I was LARPing a lot in 2012. Like every weekend I was doing high combat LARPs. And, you know, I think also reffing, which is running the event, got me used to calling safety, because as the ref in the LARPs I did, certainly you're generally there and watching. It's different in like big fest events where the refs may be like in a tent coordinating things on radios, but in small scale high combat LARP in the UK tradition, as the ref I was generally there watching, so I was actually the person best positioned to make a safety call if needed. And, you know, I LARPed in a cave for a lot of it, and chalk caves have very uneven floors and people trip over. It's a normal thing that happens, you know, and you don't want someone to get, you know, tripped over, or, you know, to have someone stand on their head or similar. Yeah, it's really interesting reading. Normally I would get up and have a full break at this point, but I don't actually feel that I need it. Yeah, my first ever, so I had already parlour LARPed when I started at that particular LARP club. I was put in chainmail, which actually helped me because I did trip over because I wasn't used to the uneven ground. But it did not hurt in the slightest because I was wearing chainmail. So I fell on what would have otherwise been very hard ground and was just like, all right, I'll get up. It's a bit harder to get up because this chainmail is very heavy. Because there's chainmail that is actual proper full steel chainmail, and then more common now because it's gotten cheaper is aluminium chain or other forms of lightweight metal chain, which doesn't have, like, you're still gonna find people who are massive traditionalists or reenactors are still gonna wear full chain, but cheating chain, as it's called, is much more common in certainly the LARPs I was doing, because you don't have to go round in, you know, 25 pounds of metal all day. More than that sometimes, depending on the size of the chainmail, and like how long the sleeves are, and because I'm short, that suit of chainmail I remember wearing was like below my knees. Yeah, and I can, because a lot of the D&D construction of like the stats of different armors is based on like what that armor did. Like chainmail is, as it's made, like better against, because bashing ripples like over the chainmail is basically crochet. I think I've talked about this before. Basically it's, you have like circles of metal that are laced together. Ignore the bunny ears. They're laced together like this, and then they'll be, you know, laced into the next, they're all interconnected, so it ripples really well. And that's partly why cheating chain doesn't look as realistic, is because it has more freedom of movement because it's lighter weight. Yeah. And so a lot of them, oh, I read what you said as bonus when you said penalty the first time. I read the correct meaning, not the typo. And yeah, it's because if you, I'm trying to remember the historical version as well, but yeah, I'm pretty sure chainmail was weaker to arrows, plate mail was weaker to like heavy weapon bashing like maces and stuff. I mean, obviously maces also pierce, like they have spikes on. This is one of the things that amused me. That LARP system inherited something from earlier versions of D&D, where priests, or clerics as they are in D&D now, couldn't use sharp weapons, right? They couldn't use like blades or draw blood or anything like that because it had massive consequences. But they could use maces. Maces which often, you know, like morning stars, are big balls of metal with then massive spikes on them. Like... Exactly. How ridiculous is that? Okay, let's get back to work. So this will be my last reading through of this book, and then I'll move on to the fan after this. I'll see if I can try and wrap myself up like at the end of a section. I won't finish this book in this 20-minute session. The problem is that obviously I'm pausing to write notes, and then I'm also pausing to think about things as well. Cheating chain when I was still LARPing was expensive, and so I never owned any, and my then husband didn't own any, and I was always envious whenever I borrowed it because it was so nice. And like, I avoided playing armor wearing. We had a suit of brigandine, which I could wear, but even that was quite heavy. And because so like I'd say 2015 was around when I first started to get sick. I'd had problems before then, but increasingly, like, I couldn't do a lot of running around and playing high combat characters and stuff. Anyway, timer. We'll be going for 20 minutes and then a 5-minute break. Good. I'll remember to mute this time. Luck, everyone. Alright, I just finished one chapter, so that is a perfect place to stop. I'll write that I stopped at folk fantasy. Am I getting distracted by reading things not relevant to my thesis that are nonetheless interesting? Yes. Was that inevitable? Also yes. Oh, excuse me. So yeah, I had some other... I read about a really interesting LARP that was done called Dublin 2, which I would describe as a kind of edge LARP. They did tons and tons of research, and it was basically a LARP designed to educate, because it was done as part of an art festival. It was in the city centre where it was held, and so it was visible to the public and had some interaction with the public, a bunch of which was like they had people stationed out there so that it was all consensual interaction for the most part. Obviously you can't 100% control that, but there were at least like signage around telling people this is, you know, an art installation, and they had so much research done to work out, like, so basically the LARP was a refugee processing centre, and refugee camp, and sort of the things surrounding that, so a border, that kind of thing. It was really interesting how they'd worked to construct that to educate people as to the experiences of asylum seekers, and specifically around a particular bit of European law regarding asylum seeking. That was really interesting how they'd done that. So I did write a couple of notes on that. It included that they had like some work with local businesses that were like, they use the term real world. I don't like the term real world, so I tend to use non-diegetic or other what other term is applicable. So with real world businesses who had agreed to give like small tasks for small amounts of fake money, or whatever the game was using as their fake currency, to people who were playing the asylum seekers that were in the camp, so that they could like pretend to be getting little bits of off-books work, and earning money that way. And it was really interesting. It was interesting to read about that. It's not relevant to my thesis. I think it sort of is, because it's connected to, so this Golden Rule of LARP first paper that I read on ethics has the statement of the primary basis of LARP ethics is things informed adults do consensually amongst themselves, and that is what's acceptable. And they sort of break down all of the terms in there. Oh my god. I'm so tired. Yeah, they break down all of the terms there, including amongst themselves, and it's the idea that, and this is one of the sort of complex feelings I've always had around pervasive LARP. So pervasive LARP is played like across a city, where, you know, it's like amongst people outside the game, and similar. And I was reading about a pervasive LARP that had like kidnapping and all sorts of things, and I'm like, how do you have to do that really carefully so that the public aren't, you know, exposed to that when they don't consent to be. But yeah, this game about asylum seekers had like it set up so that they were trying to make sure that the public were as informed as they could be and as able to consent as they could be, whilst also adding in that it's kind of an art piece. Like, you don't have to consent to walking past a play, you know, and things like that. So obviously there's a balance, but when people were choosing to get involved. Like, they gave the example of like a passerby pretended to be someone's lawyer and like got them actually through the border, which was interesting. And yeah, things like that. So anyway, this is our last pomo for today because I spent so much time talking at the beginning, which is very useful for me. As much as I don't mean to say that like it was wasted time, but that it was very useful to me to sort of think out loud, and in that sense was the first work block. Oh my god, stop yawning. This is our final session. I'm going to put now 3. I didn't get. Hang on. Oh, because it's 2 in the backlog, 3 of all my tasks. Yes, I understand. Yeah, this will be. Yeah, God. Could you stop yawning, please? This is our final pomo for the day. If you've not managed to get anything done yet, that's absolutely fine. Try and do a little bit now. I'm going to be reading some of The Wretched of the Earth, which is like one of the main texts by Frantz Fanon. Yeah, so good luck, everyone. I will probably, as usual, sign off relatively quickly once this pomo is finished, because as we can tell from all the yawning, I'm very tired and I do need to lie down again because my back is getting worse. But until then we read. So here we go. That's an out-of-date thing, little bot. I shall get rid of that timer. Ding! All right, everyone, that is us done for today. We will be back on Friday at 4 p.m. GMT with some Minecraft. By then, I will hopefully have filled 10,000 blocks with lava, and will have gathered the last bits of that we need to launch the schematic cannon in order to build the factory. And then power it and so forth. I don't think I'll have the building on the power plant, but I will at least have, you know, the pit of lava and the steam engines in place. So we will leave it there for now, and we will be back then, and on Friday and Saturday. At that time, the schematic cannon will fire, and we will watch as it gloriously builds us an entire factory. I have nearly got all of the items into that. I've just got one last thing to craft up. But for now, I will love you and leave you. Please take care of yourselves and each other. I will see you all in a couple of days, and thank you so much for being here. Bye, everyone.